I think there's a difference between democracy and democratic process. And democracy, as I understand it, especially in this country, hasn't actually been reached yet. We haven't achieved democracy. A democracy, if we did, we would not have people still fighting for the right to vote or fighting for their voice. We would have a democracy. We would have everyone able to participate. But I do think democratic processes are important, and I think what we heard from Chief was there are many, many traditions that practice democratic processes, even take into consideration what the non-humans might need in a particular decision, which is a whole other level that I'm not sure we'll get to in this country. But to the question, I believe the first part of that question is true. And I hate to say it because I work with a lot of policy folks. I work with a lot of people who really believe that we should go to Washington and we should just really demand things and we should, ask for this one change in this one line of this 35-page bill. And that when we do get that change, we should celebrate the win. And, I try not to roll my eyes or do that thing that I do sometimes. I am not your poker friend. Because this space will just give it all away. But I'll tell you, here's what I know to be true. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, everything broke. Everything. The governance system went all the way down, from the top to the bottom. There was no system of governance, and at that point you realize how military control happens. You realize how chaos happens. We weren't under an official state of emergency that allowed for chaos, but it was pretty chaotic. And on top of all of that, there have been, we're going on year 19. I don't know if y'all, I know this is a young audience, but for those of you who aren't so young, Katrina, that was 19 years ago this year. And for the 3 years that followed, 2 to 3 years that followed, there were many elections. And what was interesting was that we had hundreds of thousands of people in over 50 states who needed to vote in local elections. And we had to figure out a process of literally getting people back home to vote. And then we had to do that when there was no place for them to live or be. So you just imagine that. This was the moment where I realized the climate crisis, which was much bigger than a disaster, a storm. This thing is gonna knock out all systems of governance. And this is where tyranny can take hold. This is where the bad things can really root themselves. And so I often, listen to folks making 5-year plans about the legislation we're gonna pass, about the folks we're gonna get elected, and I try to just keep my face straight and not say the words that I actually believe in my heart to be true, which is this system will go down. And what do we have in place ready for when this system will go down? I know it's hard to believe, and I don't know that I would believe it if I hadn't seen it myself. But I'm telling you, the entire system of governance will go down. And what do we have in place? I think the work of community organizers really then comes into play. Who is working on helping folks engage, not in a vision of democracy, but a practice of it? Who's actually engaging in decision-making processes with people you might not really like so much, but we gotta make a decision together. So liking each other is not imperative to collective governance. But the ability and the agreement around collective decision-making is where we have to be. And most folks understand democracy as once every 4 years to push a button for somebody they kind of like and don't really know, and maybe they have a letter next to their name that they recognize, but they don't know anything about the person. This person is not rooted in a sense of responsibility or accountability, just sort of a popularity contest. And that is what we're that's what we're fighting for. And there's gotta be something much deeper that we're fighting for, a deep engagement, which is you have to press a button every 4 years. And the day after you press the button, you gotta go to the council meeting And the day after the council meeting, you have to sit with your neighbors and talk to them and ask what's going on. And the day after that, you've got to keep being in conversation and relationship, because democracy and engagement is not once every 4 years pressing a button for someone you don't know. It's something much deeper than that. It's like a floor that has to be constantly swept, right? It's like a thing you have to constantly engage in. And I think the opportunity in this climate crisis is to redefine democracy and to get a better vision. Like, what happens when we acknowledge the systems that have been here for a long time, rooted in responsibility, that takes 6 days to honor the beans? If we're taking 6 days to honor the beans, it's less time like hating each other, to be honest. Like, you just don't have that kind of time, you know what I mean? We gotta go to, but
too busy.
I wanna hate you in 7 days. I'm gonna hate you in 7 days, but right now I got some stuff to do. We gotta go dance, you know what I mean?
Talk to you after the beans.
Yeah, I'll talk to you after we do what we have to do. Like, what happens when our sense of responsibility is not so focused on our individual selves, but a broader collective existence? I think we have the opportunity in this climate crisis to re-envision what a democracy could be. And I think we've got to do that relatively quickly. And we've got to have, a real acknowledgement that to vision, to live, and to manage a democracy is work. And we're pretty lazy. We're pretty lazy. This representative government that we got, it feels good to us, because you're sort of like, I don't really have to care. I don't really want to talk about it today, but that's not what this is. If we want to be in a unified struggle for a really good life where we all thrive, then we're going to have to put in equal work to manage, to envision and then manage a new democracy.
And not just equal, but consistent, right? So I want to pick up on some of the words that, you talked about collective and you talked about unity. I want to add consistency to that, because it's not the push the button every 4 years. It is civic participation daily, right? It is that conversation with the neighbor. It is going to the school board meeting. It is making sure that there are diverse voices that are included, not just diverse voices, because I want to touch on the fact that diversity is just like putting pepper in a shaker of salt. It's still pepper. It's still salt, right? But we want to make sure that things are blended, that the voices are heard, so to make sure that we are always engaging and taking risk, and tapping into one another. We have to recognize that we are stewards in this planet, on this planet, a part of this planet. But we also need to acknowledge that in that we have a responsibility to always engage, not engage when there's a moment of crisis. And I think that is where we have come. I'm going to push back. I don't think we're lazy. I really don't like that term, particularly when it's applied to my people, because that's somebody else's narrative. But I do want to say that I think we have become accustomed to responding when there is a crisis, instead of always being consistent and working on the problem every day. I got about 30 pounds I need to lose. If I wait until my girls' trip in May to try to lose that, it's not going to happen. So I got to do something every day. I got to go for that walk, or, I don't jog anymore, But I got to do something every day. I have to be mindful for what I am consuming, just like we as occupants of this space have to be mindful of our consumption. We have to do something every day. We can't wait till there's another Katrina. We can't wait till there's another tipping point and everybody wants to rush to the storm. Everybody, and thank you for those of you who sent water to Jackson, Mississippi. That is an example of climate crisis. The water system broke down because of divestment, right? Because we weren't taking care every day. And then you had the flood, and when you have the flood and the water system breaks down, or you have because of climate crisis, it becomes cold in Mississippi, and it don't get cold in Mississippi like that, y'all, so that pipes break. But now that's what's happening every time it turns cold. Pipes burst. Then we have not taken care to make sure that we're managing consistently. And now we have a crisis, and everybody wants to run and send water. We appreciate that. But if we work on this every day, we never have to get there. So I just want to encourage us to make sure that we are not being reactive, but being responsive in our responsibility to this planet, to one another, to our collective.
Okay.